Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, are you jealous or envious of somebody in your life? You'll know that these feelings can really eat away at you, and certainly they're unhealthy. Well, in this teaching, you'll discover how jealousy and envy can really hold you back in your life. And also you'll learn some practical tips and advice to help you stop jealousy and envy and start enjoying your own true path. Okay, David, so what actually causes us to feel jealousy and envy?
That's a good question, Alex, because I want to just have a look at that. I think the first thing that I notice when I'm working with clients is to distinguish, are you talking about a feeling or are you talking about a belief? Now, what I notice with a lot of clients, they get those two completely mixed up and they use words like, I feel jealous. I feel that feeling is overpowering, rather than I am jealous because of. You see, and that's one of the main things of the Wu Wei Wisdom model, to separate your emotional feelings from the beliefs that create them. Remember, your emotions are always the consequence of what you believe and what you think. We're going to do the basic teaching. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim of them. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have emotions. I'm saying emotions are natural and normal and make us human beings. The emotion of love and happiness and confidence are wonderful emotions. And at the correct time, the emotion of fear and being scared and anxiousness may be appropriate. But what happens and what stops you from sorting this out is when you conflate the two and you don't know whether you're describing a feeling or you're describing a belief.
But what you've just said, David, is that if I have an uncomfortable feeling, which I'm describing as jealousy or envy, you're saying it's those uncomfortable feelings, those red light feelings as we would describe them, they are connected to something that we are believing about ourselves or the other person or the world.
That's right, Alex. And that's very important what you just said. And people ask me when we work one-to-one, why do you want to call it a red light feeling? And that to me is so important because it takes out, rather than giving it a name, you're experiencing a feeling. We're agreeing that. We're agreeing you are experiencing a feeling, an emotion that you have created. Now, if you give it a name, such as jealousy or envy, say, for instance, what you're describing that feeling as jealous or envious or another, you could call it fish and chips. You're just describing a feeling. It's a physiological event that you are feeling. Yes, you are feeling it. Wouldn't it be better to find out what is the belief that creates that feeling? And just getting that first bit right makes this teaching so much easier.
So you're moving the emphasis from stuff we are physically experiencing, so emotions and feelings, into stuff that we are thinking about. Right. So our thoughts, our self-talk, and our core beliefs.
That's right.
So David, what if I am creating feelings of jealousy and envy?
That you call jealousy and envy.
That I'm labeling as jealousy and envy. What typically, so I'm thinking about when your clients come to you, what typically are they thinking or believing? Is there a common pattern?
There is. And so just before I answer that question, for those of you who are new to our teachings, what that separation does, it takes you onto the golden thread. Because once you say, I create a red light feeling, then you can ask yourself, and you can do this at home, you don't need to go to a therapist, why am I creating that red light feeling? Now, you could say, as you say, no, I'll answer your question, I'm creating that feeling because I'm jealous of that person. Now, you see how that's much different.
But I'm getting confused now, because when you're saying I'm jealous of that person, aren't I now re-describing the feeling?
No, you're telling me, you're giving me a belief. I choose to look at that person, look at that event, and create jealousy. I am looking, in our model, for instance, just to clarify this, in our model, it's what we call CCJ. Criticizing, comparing, and being judgmental. So what I would want the client to say, I'm looking at that person and I'm comparing myself with them.
Oh, yeah. That's the key.
Now, you see, that's what I said. This jealousy and the feeling gets really confused and it makes it much more difficult. And that's what I would, just as I've spent now 5 minutes explaining it, that's how I would do it with a client. Let's separate it. Let's call it a red light feeling. And now she says, or he says, I'm jealous of that person. So now I would do exactly what you said. So what does that mean? What does that I am jealous of that person or I envy that person? And what it actually means, then it falls into our model perfectly. And we've done many teachings in the archives. CCJ, you're not criticizing that person. You are definitely comparing that person. And you may be being judgmental about yourself.
Well, that's the key, because there's one thing comparing or contrasting your life or your career or your relationship with someone else you know, or someone that you see in the media, someone you follow on Instagram. It's not the contrasting that's the problem. It's the comparing and then negatively judging yourself. And that, I guess, that thought process, and the conclusion that I haven't got what they've got and I want it and I'm less than a person, less of a person because I haven't got it. So that kind of inner dialogue, inner mind processing that's going on, that conclusion is then what creates the red light feeling that we label jealousy and envy.
Perfect. And what you just said, Alex, is what a client doesn't want to own, be accountable for, be responsible for. I am negatively comparing myself against someone else, and now I'm judging myself. They don't want to say those words. That's why they like to go into their feelings. This is what the inner child part of your mind does. It doesn't want to be accountable. It doesn't want to come straight forward, as Alex has just said, and say, you know what, David? I choose to compare myself against this person on Instagram negatively. I now choose to judge myself that they're doing well and I'm not doing well. I think this is a good idea. You don't think it's a good idea, then why are you doing it? Well, I'm doing it. For what reason? Now we're on the golden thread, you see. Now this is the golden thread. Why are you doing it then? If you do not think this is a good idea, or you do not think it's beneficial, why are you doing it?
Just for new followers, this golden thread process, this therapy model that you use with all your clients, essentially it's a form of inner self-inquiry, inner questioning, layer by layer, as you've started to talk through. David, I would imagine when you ask them the why are you doing it? You know it's creating uncomfortable feelings for you.
Yes.
So why are you still doing it? A lot of people would say, but I can't help it. Everyone does it. It's natural. It's part of being human to look around and compare and contrast and see where we're at status-wise. Okay. Surely, David.
They would say that. Here's something else they would say, and I'll address to both points. It inspires me. If I look at somebody else and they're doing good, well, it inspires me to do better than them. So here's the thing. If you think this is a good idea, and if you think this is natural and normal, and it's healthy, and it inspires you, do you teach it to your child? This is what we call the Shen test. Do you say to your child, come here, darling, come and sit on my lap. Let's now look at somebody I can compare you to. Look at this person here. Oh, look, they're doing much better than you. Let's compare you to them. Would you do that to your physical child? You would be horrified. You would almost call it child cruelty. But you do it to yourself. And this is why it's so serious. CCJ is so serious. Criticizing, comparing, and being judgmental. And let me make it clear, I am saying you should not criticize, compare, or be judgmental, because you're doing something far more serious to yourself. You're creating an internal separation, against your true value and worth that I call shen. You are creating doubt inside of you. You are sitting in judgment inside of you. You are looking at somebody else and you are promoting them to be more valuable and more worthy than you. This is like a disease. It's like a cancer inside of you that you're feeding. And every time, Alex said, I don't do Instagram. Every time you look at Instagram and go, oh, look at them. Look what they're doing. You know what? You are building up this negativity inside of you, and you are creating your own problems. Let me repeat that. You are creating your own problems. This person on Instagram doesn't even know you, not even interested in you, because you know what they're doing? They're doing something that you're not doing. They're getting on with their life. They're living their dream. They're following their potential. They're doing the best that they can do. What you're doing, and the Taoists have got a wonderful teaching on this, you're walking in their footprints. They call it, you are following, you are not treading fresh snow, you are walking in their footprints. So even at your best, you will always be second to them. You will always put them as number one. How dare you? How dare you do this to yourself? This is criminal. This is the worst thing that you could do because it's affecting your self-worth. It's affecting your value. It's creating an internal spiritual separation. It's not helping any members of your family because they're watching you do this. And this has to stop. And people don't like it when I say this, but stop it. This doesn't make sense, else you wouldn't be creating the red light feelings. Don't go into that maze of confusion.
And of course, David, that's in a way crazy and self-sabotaging enough. But the perverse thing about all of this is when we compare ourselves and judge ourselves negatively against other people, create those inner feelings of discomfort, which we can label jealousy and envy. We are comparing ourselves to a snapshot image, often of the highlights of someone. We don't know what's going on in their life. You know, they are often presenting a kind of a glossy veneer. They have shortcomings. They have issues. They're probably jealous and envious of the next person. And yet we put them on a pedestal and downgrade ourselves.
You're absolutely right, Alex. That's a wonderful teaching because it's so perverse. We put somebody else on a pedestal. We follow them. We compare ourselves to them. We try and use them as an inspirational. And then, like it always happens, if they're a celebrity, something is found out about them and they fall off the pedestal. And this is what I never understand. We never look and question ourselves and say, well, that wasn't a good idea, was it? That didn't work. Let me change that belief. You know what they do? They go and find somebody else. They just put it onto somebody else. And this is why one of the most powerful teachings of the inner child work is accountability. You can't keep on shifting the accountability for your life and live in other people's shadow. This is your life. Why don't you become accountable for it? Own it. Be the best that you can be, not the best in the world. Be the best that you can be. You are unique. There is no one in the universe like you. Isn't that enough for you? Why would you compare yourself against another unique person? They're on their journey. You're on your journey. Your children are on their journey. Let's encourage them to reach their potential, to be the best that they can be, not to copy and mimic someone else.
So, David, this accountability and taking ownership for our unique journey and appreciating that the other person is perhaps, we're only seeing the snapshot, the highlights of their life. And I guess also we have the inner child, our ego has a tendency to focus on all the good things they have, but not see the bigger picture. You know, we're not seeing the bigger picture of their life. We're just focusing on the things that we believe that we haven't got, that we want. But how do we, on a day-to-day practical basis, what can we do to stop these inner mind games with ourselves that create the red light feelings of jealousy and envy?
Well, the number one thing before we get on to the technical stuff about having a conversation with your inner child and reparenting, let me just talk a little bit about stop it. Now, I get a lot of pushback in the comments. Oh, David, it's not just as easy as stop it, I can't just stop it. But you can. Do not CCJ. Don't do it. When you hear yourself doing it against yourself or anybody else, just go stop. Step back. Take a breath. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that, because that's the road that leads me down to red light feelings, whatever what name you want to call it, jealousy, anxiety, depression, fear. Don't do it. And control yourself. Just stop. Now step back and make a correct, authentic comment without criticizing, without comparing, and without being judgmental. So the deeper, more answer to your question, Alex, is you have to build up a relationship with the part of your mind that I'm labeling the inner child. The inner child is not a monster. The inner child is not out to get you. It's not your enemy. It's not trying to mess up your life. The inner child is a reflection of you when you're about 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's stuck. It hasn't got the emotional education to understand this. The inner child sees things very much in black and white, good and bad, yes and no. That's how the inner child works. So the inner child will always want to compare, because for the inner child, that's very straightforward. They're doing better than us. We should be doing better than them. Look at them. They've got a better car, a better house. They've got a better job. Look at their children. Look at their wife. Look at their husband. This is how the inner child works. We call it the pendulum. It swings from yes and no. So the inner child will never be satisfied. Never. I've got a client, and we laughed like yesterday. He reached 2 years ago. He said, if I could reach this figure, David, I would be relaxed and happy and think. He's now gone over the figure. He's still not relaxed and happy. It's like, I often say, it's like the donkey and the carrot. Mm-hmm. Do you know when the carrot is dangling in front of the donkey? That's what comparing is. You never reach it.
So what do we need to do to explain to our inner child that this is it's a harmful exercise?
Yes, so you reparent the inner child and you ask the inner child, again, we've done many teachings in the archives, why do you want to compare yourself? You do the golden thread on the inner child. What is the benefit that you see in comparing yourself? Now, it's going to be very difficult for the inner child to be honest with you and straightforward. But I would say, at the end of the day, when you've gone through all the the avoidances, the inner child will say to you, I want to be top dog. I want to be on a pedestal. I want everybody to love me, to appreciate me, to support me. I want to be perfect. I never want to fail. When I do something, I want it right first time, better than anybody else. Now you see, this is the mindset of the inner child. But to get to that mindset takes a little bit of effort, as Alex has just said. The inner child is not just going to come out and say that, because you know that is so silly. But it's an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, 5-year-old, and that's what it wants. I want to be number one, so everybody adores me. When I walk into a room, I want everybody to kind of go, oh my goodness, there's Alex. She's so wonderful. She's so fantastic. Oh, I hope you get to meet her. That's what the inner child wants. I call it to be special, to be elevated. If it's a girl, a little princess. A little princess that everybody recognizes the princess and throws petals in front of her. If it's a boy, wants to be a prince, wants to be in control, wants to ride the fastest horse, the best looking horse, win the race. And that's what the inner child likes. And that's why I love the analogy and the metaphor of the inner child, because it's a childlike view.
So do we have to, so this inner dialogue that we are having with that part of our mind, which we can do in a kind of a quiet meditation, a quiet moment with ourselves, or through journaling, do we need to, when the inner child has opened up, that part of our mind, and has explained, it's because I want this, I want that, I don't believe I've got this, I don't believe I'm good enough, I don't believe I'm lovable, all the things that our inner child is typically hooked into. Do we need to then just reassure our inner child, darling, you don't need to prove yourself.
No,
you don't need validation from other people. You don't need this high status job or high status partner in order to be good enough.
No, Alex, it's a little bit more, the conversation, it's more like a re-education. It's no good just saying to the child, you don't need it, because the child is not going to change their belief. You have to then go a little bit deeper, and it's almost like deconstructing the belief. You have to look at the belief. It's like if your physical child came home from school and said to you, Mummy, I don't think I'm good enough. You wouldn't tap them on the head and say, oh, yes, you are, darling. Now go and play. You would want to know why they think that. Where did that come from? What was the root cause, the seed of that belief? And it's exactly the same. And this is why I like the analogy of the inner child. You treat your inner child exactly the same way as you would treat your physical child. So as you said, if the inner child says, I'm not good enough, you don't tap it on the head and say, yes, you are, darling. You're wonderful. Now go and play. You would be asking, why do you, the golden thread, why do you believe you're not good enough? Where does that come from? And I can tell you, in a high percentage of my clients, it comes from authority figures, parents, grandparents, teachers, either what they said directly to them or what the child inferred by the way that they acted or looked. That is in the normal way. So the question is, let's take the worst case scenario. If your mother and father looked you in the eye, stood you on the wall and says, you're not good enough, does that make it true? And we've done lots of work in the archives. So if that applies to you, please look in the archives. I call it reparenting the child. Does that make it true? Because your parents have got their own issues. And as we grow older and become parents ourselves, we understand parenting a child is not easy and it's not perfect. And we don't always get it right. There is no a parent out there that could put the hand up and say, you know what, I got everything spot on every time, all the time, never made a mistake, never said the wrong thing, never looked bad at my child, always supported them, dropped the cooking and went to them immediately. No one does it. And so we have to educate the child, and we have to connect the child back to their self-worth and their value, what I call Shen.
And David, this is so interesting because really what is a kind of very surface level thing that we are encountering in our daily life. You know, we're creating these feelings of jealousy and envy through just comparing ourselves with someone we know or someone we see on Instagram. It tracks all the way back to these childhood misunderstandings, and that it's not simply a case of, oh, well, I'm not going to look at Instagram anymore. I'm not going to hang around people who are very wealthy anymore, because all that's doing is it's not dealing with the original issue which was created in childhood. In essence, it's kind of just removing the trigger, but the misunderstanding within our core beliefs, as you've described, which is held on to by our inner child, that's still there. It's like a dormant seed which still is ready to sprout as soon as we are put in front of something glossy on Instagram or a person who we believe is doing better than us. So we need to do this deeper work in order to really root out beliefs which cause the feelings of jealousy and envy.
You're 100% correct, Alex, because if you say, like a lot of my clients do, I won't look at Facebook again, then you just find something else. Yeah. It'll just be something else. Like my client who set a target, beat the target, then he just sets another target, and he sets another target, and he's never going to be happy. You have to go to the root core of the problem. And the root core of the problem is somewhere in your childhood, you created a separation against doubting your Shen, your true, inherent, innate worth and value. And that, until you solve that issue with yourself, this is the key. And the Taoists call it the fountainhead, the beginning. I call it the first domino. Until you get that first domino right, and then all the dominoes spread out, you have to go back to the core. And this is what the golden thread does for you. Starting at the highest level, which is the red light feelings. And the red light feelings are telling you there's something going on. Now you've got to find out what's going on. You quite rightly said, it is not looking at Instagram. That's not the problem. The problem is much deeper than that. And if you stop looking at Instagram, then you look at Facebook, then you look at a magazine, then you'll be watching television, and somebody will look in a certain way. And then you'll say, and that's why I dislike this word so much, I'm triggered. I'm triggered. It's like they're doing something to you. See, you become the victim. And this is all to do with the inner child. When you create a red light feeling, listen to what I'm saying. When you create that red light feeling, there is an inner child stuck. They need your help. They need your assistance. They need you to go and hold their hand. This is so important for me. And I know people say, you're very passionate about this. I am. This can change your life. When you get that red light feeling, think about a little child huddled in a corner, frightened, terrified, not knowing which way to go, and so creating red light feelings. Why don't we go down and speak to the child? Yes, it's not easy, but it's much better to speak, understand their problems, give them a hand of love and help, and guide them out of this dark place so they can go out and play. Why can't they go and play and enjoy life? Rather than looking at other people, why don't they enjoy their own life? Walk in fresh snow. Go and make a big snowman. Gamble around, throw snowballs. Do something in the unknown. The unknown is exciting. You don't follow somebody else. And this is why it's so, so important.
Thank you, David. And I will put links in the show notes to our Inner Child teaching playlist. And there's plenty of long form teachings on there to help you with this inner child reparenting technique. And I'll also put links to videos on the golden thread process that David has mentioned, and which is at the heart of everything we teach. We really hope you have enjoyed this video. Please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think it may also help. David works every week with clients all over the world via Zoom video call on exactly these sorts of issues. If you'd like to learn more about David's one-to-one consultations, please also check out the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.